If you're thinking about building a house in the near future, this video is going to be really helpful. There are some things that make it probably more difficult than ever before that you really need to consider and at least plan for. And if you don't, you're setting yourself up for failure. I'm going to be talking about the lessons that I personally learned when it comes to building right now. There are unique challenges, and there's actually 3 in general that we're going to be talking about here, and they have a huge impact on building. So if you're thinking about building on your own or subcontracting out stuff, being the general contractor on your own project, this is going to be extremely helpful for you. My name is Brandon, and we've been building this Barndo over the past year and a half. We lived in our RV while we started. Right now we're downstairs, it's all finished. We're living inside the Barndo, but it's been a really challenging time to build. By the way, if you're interested in building, or if you're trying to build a project on your own, we're building a homestead here. So if you're into building, homesteading, and things like that, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below if you think I missed anything too. I would love to hear your feedback and make this video better. So the first challenge is actually materials. Since 2020, there's been huge supply chain issues. You probably are familiar with this and aware of this, but you might not know how bad it is for certain things. When we were building our Barndo, we've had supply chain issues throughout the entire project. Now, we were lucky enough that we were building it ourselves, but if I had scheduled time for contractors to come out and do things and they were waiting on materials that I had purchased, this would have been a huge problem. It still was a huge problem. Let me show you something really quick. You might notice there's no windows on our Barndo. And that's because supply chain issues. The company that makes the glass for all of the major window factories around. So there's a bunch of different window factories, but guess what? They get their glass from the same place. And this caused our windows to go from being a month back ordered to about 6 months back ordered. And so that was a huge delay. Those kinds of delays are rampant right now. When we were building, we actually couldn't get 3/4 plywood OSB. We could only get 7/16. I was also at our local hardware store yesterday trying to get some asphalt shingles and some welded wire, and I grabbed these ones. The guy said, geez, you're lucky that you got these. We've been back ordered for 3 months with asphalt shingles and we can't get welded wire anymore. I couldn't believe it because those are such basic items. Now, this wasn't Home Depot, it was our local builder supply store, but I'm sure Home Depot is facing similar problems. There's been huge shortages of MDF and all kinds of other things. So all that to say is that there are massive amounts of disruption in the supply chain, and this is causing a huge problem. So one thing we did is we went and bought as much materials as we possibly could, and that way we always had the next step taken care of. If you're planning on building and subcontracting out and your contractors need to get things and you have people lined up, it can get very problematic, as I mentioned. So buying as much material as possible is, I think, probably a good thing to do, especially when it comes to the next issue, which is prices. When it comes to prices have been insane. When we were building, which was last year, like framing, for example, lumber was increasing by like 10% per week. That's no exaggeration. I saw OBS just skyrocket. So in addition to supply problems, we also had prices that were skyrocketing, and that makes sense. We also have inflation happening at a crazy rate, and so this all leads to a tremendous amount of price increase. When you look at everything, I mean, look at how much copper is, how much lumber is, how much pipe is. It's crazy. Like 2-inch pipe is over $3 a linear foot. So you have to really consider that the prices are going to be fluctuating and they're probably going to go up. And so I would say, as a general rule, you're going to need to really increase your budget and plan for a way to have access to more capital. So you can't really do much about prices because stuff costs what it costs, but you can price shop. I found that the variance between different builder supply stores, lumber supply stores, and just different stores in general have dramatically different pricing. For example, drywall sheets that I was shopping, I found some that were $13 for the same exact product, $13, $14.71, and $15.25 per 4x1/2 inch sheet. And that was just last week. So you can make a big amount of savings by making sure that you're shopping every place, and tell the places that you're calling that you're price shopping and see what the best they can do is. If you can start to build relationships with building supply stores, you're going to be a lot better off. I think as the economy shifts now from being just booming and going crazy to more of like a weird stagflation economy, you're going to probably have more buying options and more buying power because people will be competing more for your business. Back when I was buying lumber, they didn't have it, right? 7/16 lumber was all they had, or 7/16 OSB was all they had. They didn't have 3/4 in stock. Like, that's wild. There's just crazy things happening. In addition to price shopping, I think it's important that you have enough capital to go into it. You need to have multiple options for how are we going to raise capital. If we need to buy more material, are we going to just stop and then build as we go? Or, what are the contingency plans that we have in place? I think there's going to be a lot of people who try to do things with construction loans, and maybe the appraiser won't come in as high because the market's declining a little bit. Maybe the money's not going to go as far as it thought it was. It could be a whole bunch of things that could happen. And so you're going to have to be smart and be creative and come up with a few contingency plans, because I think you're going to have to get creative. That's what we had to do several times throughout this process. So if you didn't have shortages of materials, costs that were skyrocketing, on top of that, you have major labor shortages. And this is a huge problem. If you're in a rural space like I am, there's actually, nobody has websites around here. So first off, it's really hard to find people. And then when you do find people, they're booked out for over a year. It's insane. So if you're thinking about building and you want to like subcontract out something like the drywall, like you're really smart and you say, I don't want to do drywall. That's a really smart idea, by the way. I'm doing drywall right now. Then you need to make sure that you're going to be able to find contractors. And one of the things that I found has been really, really helpful, especially in rural communities, is if you go to local builder supply stores, you can get referrals there. Facebook groups are fantastic. You can typically find somebody through these avenues because most people don't have websites in rural spots. And so if you're doing any kind of Google search, you're going to come up completely short. When I was doing my concrete, for example, which is one of the things I subcontracted out, I couldn't find any concrete contractors around here. And so I ended up finding somebody in a Facebook group. You have to be kind of creative like that. Once you find people, though, you'll find that they are very much booked out. So you need to really have a good feel for how things are going, how busy people are, and just doing calls to find out what their schedules looks like, how they've been over the past year, what they expect, and just start talking to them and building relationships, because it is really, really hard to find labor across the board. It's difficult. People are booked out. For example, when I bought my kit, I was trying to price out some people to build this for me. And almost everybody that I contacted was at least 18 months out before they could even consider starting a new project. It's just crazy. So you have this perfect storm of difficulty getting materials, costs are skyrocketing and changing all the time, and then also it's hard to get labor. What should you do about that? The way that I approached it is I thought to myself, number one, I definitely want to build a place, and I don't think that I can time the market because I'm not that good. Obviously, I bought lumber on the most expensive day in history so far, so I'm not a good person to time the market. I know a lot of people are waiting around for prices to come down and things to happen, and I don't think that that's a good strategy because you don't know when that's going to happen. It's completely out of your control. The things that I like to do are proactive. We need to be proactive in doing things that we can control, because there's going to be a lot of things that are completely out of your control. Let me explain. When it comes to buying materials, if you could buy as many materials and store them as possible, it's going to help you to get a definitive price on what things are going to be. So if you can buy in bulk and plan ahead, you're going to be much further ahead than if you just are buying as you go. That's one thing. Number two is if you can have additional ways to get access to more capital. If you have more capital available, you're always going to be in a better position. So when you're creating your budget, I would probably right now, based on this market, do a 20% buffer of additional cost just to give that. If you say, okay, we're going to build it, it's going to cost $200,000, plan on it costing $240,000 just because prices are going up so much. I think that that's probably overkill, but if the worst case scenario is you have money left over, and that's always a good thing. Try to give yourself as much head time as possible, meaning giving yourself time to let things come in. Like appliances take forever, flooring's taking forever if you're doing custom flooring. Paint is actually hard to get sometimes, which is crazy. Like, the state of everything is just a lot of uncertainty, and it takes a long time. So you need to budget that in as best as you can, and then also have the expectation that things are gonna just take longer than you expect. And that's just the reality of how building is right now. So one thing that we did on our property so that we could, number one, be as effective as possible, number two, save time and money, is that we lived on our property while we were building. So the first thing we did was we had our RV. We had full hookups, and we were able to live and work right here. So that's really helpful because we didn't have to drive to and from a job site. It saved a lot of time. The second thing that we did was we built the house. Initially, we were gonna try to get everything done so that we were able to be in by winter. Guess what? It's taking longer than we expected, right? Which is one of the things I mentioned you should expect. So it's taking longer than expected, but here's what we did. We finished the bottom floor, and then we're working on the top floor now. This did a couple things. The first thing is it gave us the ability to move in incrementally, and basically we're doing things as we needed to get them done. The second thing that it did was it gave us a lot of practice downstairs. So when we're doing the drywall upstairs, we're much better at it. We get to see the finished product with texture and paint and everything on there. So we can say, okay, next time we do this, we're gonna have to fix this spot. This is what it needs to look like. And before, like when you're doing drywall, for example, if you don't know what the finished product looks like based on the work that you're doing, if you've never done it before, it's just really helpful to have this done in steps. And the way that I look at it is I need a place to live. I need a place for my family. This isn't necessarily an investment, right? Typically, I consider investments as things that pay me rather than me paying for it. So I'm not trying to flip this house. This is gonna be a place that we live. Ultimately, I really want it to be incredibly nice, exactly what we want. And so because of that, I'm not trying to time the market. I'm definitely trying to save money wherever I can, but the expectation is that it's gonna take longer than I expect. It's also gonna cost more than I expect. And if I have those expectations, I'm not gonna be disappointed, at least. I hope I can save money, but at the end of the day, those have to be the expectations that I have. I know that the house will be worth much more than I put into it because I'm doing all the work. And right now, cash is losing value anyways. So the more money that I put into physical assets, like materials and things like that, I figure that that's actually a pretty good place to put my money. But I'm sure that everybody has their own goals when it comes to investments, cash management, and things like that. If you have any questions in particular, please let me know. I'm happy to answer questions. I've been building my house all by myself with almost no experience, and it's been wild. We're getting closer to being done, and we got lots of projects coming up. So be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Have a good day, everybody.